it's with the storm and everything, everybody's having a little bit later coming in, but if we'll go ahead and have a seat, we'll go ahead and begin today. I know. I can do it. All right. Well, good morning and welcome to the Owen County Chamber Legislative Breakfast. We have a lively bunch this morning. Everybody's excited to be here. Woohoo! This morning's breakfast is sponsored by the BBP Water Corporation, and without sponsorship, events like this would not happen. So I want to take a moment to make sure that we thank them. So if you could please go ahead and applaud to make sure that we can thank BBP Water for sponsoring this morning. I also want to thank the Owen Valley Christian Fellowship for always hosting our legislative breakfast. That's fantastic. Thank you, Pastor Bill. That's really important. Thank you. And then also this morning, as always, we have Main Street Coffee, and I've got my chamber captains back there. We have Drew Heckman and we have Sadie Neff, are our two chamber captains that are volunteering this morning, so let's give them a hand for being here. I want to just go over a few of housekeeping rules. If you have a question this morning, make sure you go ahead and raise your hand with your question. If you will, wait till I come around with this mic. And the reason we do that is so that we can go ahead and hear you for all the people that are joining us on Facebook. That way we can hear that the question's been asked, and then we'll make sure that we can hear the answer as well. So I appreciate that. And then also our legislators are here this morning. Let's give them a big round of applause for being here today. Senator Bray, Senator Bassler, and Representative Heaton, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here. And Representative Heaton, we're so glad that you were okay from hitting that deer last month and that nothing happened to you. So thank you for being here.
It was only $8,400.
Oh, goodness. Well, my last thank you this morning is to our County Councilman Anton Neff, who moderates our legislative breakfast. So County Councilman, if you would like to come on up, the show is yours.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our third and final legislative breakfast for this session. As a reminder, if you'd like to follow along, there's a great resource to track every bill that's going in front of these gentlemen and through the process there in Indianapolis, and that's iga.in.gov. That's the website for the legislature. You can view hearings, both recorded and live. You can look at the vote counts. You can look at the latest bill language, and as our discussion unfolds this morning, you'll probably hear some bill numbers, and you can plug those in and look up exactly what that bill concerns. So that's a big resource you should track regularly. It's iga.in.gov. The other thing I'll point out, as many of you probably have in your hands, are the flyers, or the items that our legislators have passed out this morning. If you need a copy, they're in the back, or we can get you one. They are highlighting some of the key things that they're working on there this session. With that, we're going to jump right in, and we're going to let our legislators have some opening remarks. And if you can also remind folks of some of the deadlines and some of the dates here that are left for this session to pass bills and make their way to the governor if so. So with that, Senator Bray.
All right, thank you very much.
Test 1, 2. Okay, got it. Thanks, Anton. And first of all, before I get going, my name is Rod Bray, Senate District 37, which incorporates basically from Spencer north in Owen County. You've got the southern part of Putnam County, all of Morgan County, and I have the western third of Johnson County as well. So again, pleased to be with you all again here today. Before I get into any of my other opening remarks, I'm going to give a congratulations to the 100th year anniversary for the Owen County Chamber. They had them up to Indianapolis in the State House this last week, and it was fantastic to have them there. And since they've been operating and trying to improve things going on in Owen County since 1925, that's a long run. So congratulations, Marcy, and everybody that's involved. And just fantastic work. So Anton kind of put me on the spot. I don't know that I know the final date. I can look it up before we finish here today, but I don't know quite what the deadline is. So where we are right now in the legislative session is we finished the first half, so all the Senate bills have moved from, either died or moved from the Senate to the House. And now we in the Senate are taking a look at the House bills and kind of moving those through committee, debating them, seeing which ones will move forward, and now we're starting to get some that are coming to the floor to vote on as well. So, and that's going to go on for a couple more weeks. The legislative session will continue until we have to be finished by April the 29th. I feel like we'll be finished by April the 24th or the 25th. We always try and move the deadline up a little bit so we just do our work a little more quickly, and it's just easier when you don't have the last day as the real deadline and you're trying to get things done and rush before midnight. We've been there before and don't really want to go there again. So we try to kind of have a false day before that so we can get our work finished in a timely way. And as we all kind of procrastinate, as long as we act like that's the last day, it works out pretty well. So anyway, so we're working through those right now. We've got a lot of House issues that priority issues that we're working through. That a lot of them pertain to things like healthcare costs and some education issues, some energy issues. So a real variety of things that are that we're debating now, and all of which were pretty well vetted through the House, but we're kind of working on them as well. We'll put our own stamp on them. So happy to talk about those or anything else that you all want to talk about here today, including property tax, which is a big one that that was Senate Bill number 1. It's now moved out of the Senate, of course, and now it's over in the House. They had a long hearing on it this week, and they're working on it. And from a leadership perspective, the Senate, the House, and the governor all continue to meet, certainly weekly, not quite daily, but we talk about it every day about what the property tax bill might look like at the end of the legislative session and where we're going to land on that. So happy to talk about that as well.
I don't really have a whole lot to add, but to Senator Bray's point, about 2 weeks before session wraps up is when we usually finish up the House bills and the House finishes up the Senate bills. Then we have to reconcile the differences between the bills. But most of my the next several weeks will be focused on really three main areas. One is it's K-12 funding. That's always a kind of a big item to take care of. And then the chairman of our appropriations committee, Senator Mishler, kind of asked me to get involved with higher ed funding this year, so that'll take up a fair amount of time over the coming weeks. And then the last thing, and I won't bore you to the minutia of this, but there's one particular bill. It's called it's for the Department of Local Government Finance. It's the DLGF bill, and every year that gets to be rather large. And the gentleman on the House side that I work with, our goal is to make it be smaller in size than the actual budget bill. Now, sometimes we're successful at that, sometimes we're not. But those will be the three things I'll just be focusing on the next few weeks, and I'm happy to be here and happy to hear what all of you have to say today and what kind of input you can provide. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks for everybody for coming out today. Jeff, you're over here. I'm kind of used to seeing you over here.
I'm looking for different.
But that's okay. We'll mix it up a little bit, so that's good. Yeah, we're in the second half of this long session. We haven't really voted on anything on second or third reading yet, and but being the Ways and Means Committee, we're here and get a lot of testimony on a couple of bills, especially Senate Bill 1 and also Senate Bill 518. Senate Bill 1 deals with property taxes, and Senate Bill 518 deals with charter schools and the funding of charter schools. And so we had about a week and a half ago, we had total was for those two bills was about close to 9 or 10 hours, I think it was. Started at 1:30 and got out of there by 10:30 last Wednesday night. So, but that's part of it, and that was just all good. But also, as far as Senate Bill 1 goes, we're looking at House Bill 1402 that could possibly be amended into Senate Bill 1. And that deals with business personal property taxes. And we worked on this a few years ago, and the goal is to really reduce it or to eliminate it altogether. And so it will affect some cities. Terre Haute will be affected greatly. Bloomington, I'm not too sure much that will affect them much, but I remember a few years ago we dealt with it. Terre Haute was really kind of upset with even that issue even coming up, but so we'll see how that goes. But a lot of the bills, the first half that we voted on in the House, I think 91% was bipartisan. You didn't read that in the Star, I don't think, but anyway, but it's good. We work things out, and really the last 2 weeks of this session, last 2.5 weeks, deals with conference committee reports, and some people will say that's when this session really starts, and because a lot of things is discussed and worked out with amendments, and also other bills that might not have got much of a hearing would go into maybe a final bill. But it's something where it is a process, whether you like it or not, and hopefully we'll work it out in the end, and hopefully be out there by Friday the 25th of April, but who knows? So time will tell. So again, thanks for everybody being here, and look forward to the dialogue this morning. Thank you.
And Senator Bray has those dates.
Yeah, so I went back and took a look, and the deadlines are basically as follows for this second half of session. April the 10th is the committee report deadline, meaning when a committee hears a set of bills or has a committee hearing, the chairman has to sign and file a report that runs across the desk of in the Senate chamber. And so if a bill hasn't been heard by that April 10th deadline, that means it's not moving forward. It means it's dying. After that, the next week on Monday, the 14th of April, I think that's a Monday, is a second reading deadline, which means that it has to have the second reading on the floor of the chamber. That second reading is when people from the floor of the Senate chamber can make amendments to the bill, and we debate whatever amendments those are. That's April the 14th. The third reading deadline, which is the third reading, is when we actually debate and vote on the bill. That would be April the 15th. And so if a bill hasn't moved through those processes, the second reading deadline on the 14th, the third reading deadline on the 15th, then again it dies. Once we get to that point, just another quick statement or two about our process, then that means the Senate has heard all the House bills that it will hear and passed out all the House bills it will hear. The House will have heard and passed out all the Senate bills by that time, and their deadline is probably a day earlier than that. That's typically the case. Anyway, after that, then it's just a conference committee time. Every bill that would go to the governor's desk has to have been passed out of the House and the Senate in identical form, meaning down to every comma and every period. And so oftentimes that's not the case because there are changes or amendments that happen. And so a conference committee is set up between members of the House, Republican and Democrat, members of the Senate, Republican and Democrat. Those people get together, trying to hash out the differences to see if they can bring a bill together that is exactly the same, and then the House and Senate vote on those again, and then they can go to the governor's desk. So that's kind of looking forward through this rest of the legislative session.
It is quite fascinating, and if you really want to look up a chart, it's online, and you can see how that all works out. Okay, well, we're going to go with questions for the balance of our time this morning, and we're going to go subject-oriented as we did last time. We seem to have a better discussion, a little more deeper discussion on issues. So who would like to ask our first question this morning? All right, Kim.
Good morning. Yes? Oh, you're holding. Okay. Sorry. Hey, I want to talk about, of course, Senate Bill 1, House Bill 1001. Of course, Senate Bill 1 is the property tax bill. House Bill 1001 is the budget bill, and then 518, which requires traditional public schools to share money with charter schools. So when we put those pieces together like a puzzle, we really could have a large impact on our public schools. I know that initially with Senate Bill 1, the original plan would have capped the increase at 3% for most Hoosiers, which again, it's hard to talk to everybody about. Please don't cut property taxes too much. I don't like property taxes either, but, and then 2% for seniors. Now it looks like it's closer to 1% for 2027 and 2% for 2028, and then there's a provision in there, $2,500 credit for first-time home buyers. So when we put the Senate Bill 1, House Bill 1001, which we don't know what the budget's going to look like yet, and then, of course, Senate Bill 518, where we are sharing money with charter schools, there could be a very large impact on our traditional public schools. Bob mentioned Vigo County, and I do work with the teachers there. So that initial property tax bill would have resulted in a loss of nearly $3 million for them. So please look at those pieces. Also, in the line of education, Senate Bill 287 is about partisan school boards. I don't think that politics have a place in the schools. I know that it's hard to keep it out, but again, when our people in our communities decide that they're going to run for the school board, it needs to be because they care about the public schools, not necessarily what their political affiliation is. And also reminding you that with House Bill 1041, I already know that we have bills about athletes and playing in sports in our K through 12 schools. This one really is aimed at our colleges and universities. So our public schools should accept and affirm everyone. And so whether we have parental choice and you're choosing vouchers with private schools, charter schools, we still should want in our communities to have the best traditional public schools as possible. It brings more business, it brings people real estate wise wanting to have their families here. So please, as we look at all of those pieces of the puzzle, to pay attention again to what this is doing with our traditional public schools and that every student feels welcome.
All right, education, subject of education. Any comments?
Yeah, I'll start just by making a couple of observations. Kim, thanks for your comments. First of all, you know, it is a challenging time to be involved in schools right now. There's a lot of things out there that that create some challenges. Obviously, Senate Bill 1 is a reform of property taxes, and any local government has been watching that very closely because it probably means you're going to have less revenue. There are lots of different versions and ideas floating out there about Senate Bill 1 right now. What the Senate passed is something that's going to provide over a course of a couple of years about $1.4 billion of property tax relief for homeowners across the state. And but as you guys all know, I think property taxes are local funding. There's not a dollar, not a dime of property taxes goes to the state. It's all locals. Counties, cities, towns, and schools is a huge part of it. So we're going to land that somewhere that we give some property tax relief, but also allow local governments to continue to perform the duties that they have to perform. But you take that one, and you take House Bill 1001, which is our budget bill, and you know, we have given record increases to public schools and record investment to public schools over the last 3 budgets. Not going to be able to do that this time because the dollars simply are not going to be there. We're looking right now at a possibly 2% increase in year 1 of the budget and 2% increase in year 2 of the budget. And but that's only if the fiscal forecast stays as good as it was in December. And it wasn't good in December, but if it gets worse and things are trending that way right now, then we might not even be able to do that. So that creates a challenge. I do admit also that Senate Bill 518. I'll give you a little bit of insight as to what that does, but that creates a challenge for schools as well. But it simply says that in a public school, if there are 100 kids from that school that are going to a charter school, and a charter school is a public school too, please do not misunderstand that. It's a correct. That if 100 kids go to that school, then the property taxes a share of the property taxes that are kind of attributed to each child would follow and go to that charter school as well. And some people have a problem with that, but I give the Indianapolis public school system as the example. 60% of IPS kids go to a charter school. 60%, well more than half. How is it fair that IPS is only educating 40% of the kids, but they get 100% of the property taxes for schools? That doesn't make any sense to me, and I do not get that math. So that's the reason for 518. And then, but it does create problems. And then you take that, and then the other challenge out there, and frankly, I agree with this one in a large part, but the federal government's talking about making massive changes to the federal Department of Education. And so there's a lot of uncertainty there about whether those federal dollars will continue to flow to schools or not. What I would love to see the federal government do is either get rid of or pare down the federal Department of Education dramatically, and the money that it's send to the state so we can invest it in schools, because I think we'll do a much better job than they do. So, but anyway, so I understand the concern and the challenges that are created out there. We're looking at all those things to make sure we understand how they fit together, so that schools continue to be funded like we have invested in record ways in the last 3 budgets. But Kim, thanks for bringing up those issues. They're very important.
All right, Bob, you had a couple comments?
Yeah, kind of following up on the charter school bill and the issue of Senate Bill 518. There are 84 charter schools in the state of Indiana, okay? And of those 84, 4 are virtual charter schools. So I know in, 2011, Kim, and you were probably there, but that was my first session. And we did a lot of work when it comes to public education and traditional public schools, charter schools, expansion also, and vouchers. And you know, I heard from more people, oh, it's gonna just do away with traditional public schools and this and that. And it wasn't that, obviously, the case at all. And I get that. I mean, whenever you're looking at taking some money from here and put it here, people do get upset with that. But, you know, sometimes people think we've got 600 charter schools in Indiana, and that's not the case at all. And most of them are in Marion County. And we have one down here at Ellisville, Seven Oaks, and I talked to Headmaster Dr. Stephen Chip the other day, and by the way, they have to take everybody. Okay, they don't pick and choose. They have to take everybody, and they've got a very severe disabled individual that goes there to Seven Oaks, and so. But anyway, but I get it. But in committee the other day in Ways and Means, there was a lot of discussion about fairness, and you know, you can argue whether it's fair or not, but it's kind of it boils down to, you know, the money follows the child. And you know, some people don't like to hear that, but as I made a comment over here to my friend Dave, right, and my daughter, and I've said this before. You know, she's a pharmacist and so forth, but she put that aside and she started to homeschool little Daniel, and when he was in the 1st grade, and Elise also, and so forth. But all of them now are in traditional public schools at Stone Elementary, North Clay, Northview, and they're loving it, and it's great. You know, so traditional public schools are a big thing. But if somebody wanted to send their child to a public school in Marion County because they can get a better education, you know, over here versus over there, who am I to say, no, you can't do that? So, but the bottom line is we got to educate our youth, and I tell you what, people talk about, you know, how do we get them out of the hood? Well, that's how you get them out of the hood. You know, get them educated, and nowadays, you know, they can go to Ivy Tech, or they can go to Vincennes Community College and get a degree of diesel mechanics or whatever, and be making $90,000 in a year or two. So anyway, you gotta want it. You know, we talk about people don't usually talk about personal responsibility more like we did growing up, but whatever happened to personal responsibility in some cases, but and some people don't want to work. But and we get into the Medicaid issue also, and we're going to be looking at that, and you can comment later if you want, ma'am. But anyway, so I can go on, and there's a lot of things to deal with in the next 6 weeks, and we'll see how it goes.
All right, so public, education in general, subject matter, Dwayne, is an education-related subject? Okay. The mic's coming around to you.
Okay. As you're probably aware, it's unlikely that your constituents know who the heck you are. Now, you want to make school boards partisan. What's the largest group of voters in this state? It's straight line voters. That's Republicans. People are going to go to that voting booth having no clue who their school board member candidates are. And they're going to pull most the R level. At least if it's not partisan, they're forced to look. It's just wrong. It's a power play by the party. Please, I pray you don't do it. Force people to pay some attention to actually what's going on in the school. As to vouchers and charter schools, it was all sold on better performance. Statistics don't prove that. They prove that there's no significant difference. Despite hundreds, if not millions of dollars spent by outside, out-of-state entities promoting charter schools and private schools, despite the hundreds of thousands of dollars out of state. Well, it's largely private schools and charter schools are propped up by the hundreds of thousands of dollars in political contributions from outside entities to this state. It is time to look at how the public feels about private schools. They're against it. They're against vouchers. Yet, you guys keep doing everything you can to put the dollars there. And I like to believe that it isn't due to political contributions, that you're just misguided, that you've bought that disinformation from outside sources. So I urge you to stop sending the dollars to private schools and public schools. I do want to applaud you, though, for finally passing some legislation, or hopefully passing some legislation that'll look at their budgets and hold them accountable. And it's been a long time coming with so many tax dollars actually being stolen by charter schools and private schools. Thank you for your attention to these important issues.
Any comments from our legislators?
I've got a couple.
Sure, go ahead.
So I'll address the second issue first with regard to voucher schools. And you and I are just not going to agree at all. I think the idea of parent choice is something that's been, I'm fully on board. I think it's a good policy. I think parents ought to be able to choose the school that they want to go to and shouldn't be necessarily locked into the school they have to go to based on zip code. And the idea that people are against it is absolutely incorrect across the state. About 90% of the people support it. I campaign on it. Every member of the Senate campaigns on it, and we're successful. So I just think there's a different perspective there. I used to be against the idea of partisan school boards, but I've come around and we passed something out of the Senate this year, and I voted for it for the first time. And I guess it comes down to a couple of things. You brought up a really good point that some people don't have the ability or they don't know their school board members, and people should go out and look them up. You're absolutely right in that respect. But I also can tell you that I hear a lot of stories, and I've had the same thing go on in myself in my school district. People see somebody on there and they try and go online and find out about that school board candidate, and they just can't. I mean, you know, school boards are small, they don't pay very much at all. People don't have a lot of money to spend on a campaign necessarily. Maybe they don't create a website. And so you can't, it's difficult to find out something about every candidate that's running for school board. And the thing about somebody filing and running as a part of a party is each party, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, and even though Republicans have a lot of success in Indiana right now, certain parts of the state of Indiana are still continue to be dominated by the Democrat Party. So it depends on where you're at. But both of those parties have a well-traveled, well-worn path to figure out how to vet candidates. And so you can't just sign up as on the Democrat Party and expect that you'll just skate through, because you're going to have a primary to run through. And that might change as it moves over in the House. I know there's conversations about how exactly that will work. But it's easier to find out who those candidates are because of the infrastructure that the party has. And you can find out more about them as a result of that. And the final thing I'll say is simply this, as I kind of muse over the issue, is that you take city government or county government, people say that the school's not partisan, the issues aren't partisan. Well, plowing a road in your town isn't partisan either. Paving a road in your town isn't partisan. Making sure that your toilet flushes when you press the handle is not a partisan issue. None of those things in the local government are partisan really in any way, shape, or form. In fact, you could say, and the same thing with schools, making sure that the building infrastructure is there, making sure that you've got curricular materials, making sure you've got good teachers in the classroom. You know, those things aren't partisan either. There are some partisan philosophical things that go on in schools about how to educate our kids. And we watch that play out in school board meetings across the state every month now. Books in the school library and all sorts of things like that. There are some probably more philosophical things going on our school level than are certainly going on our city and county level, frankly. So I don't think that the idea that there's no politics in schools now is accurate, and I don't think this is going to change it, but I think it will help people kind of vet those candidates. And so I think, again, you and I are going to disagree on that issue.
All right, follow-up question, Polly.
This public is very thankful for our vouchers. I feel like our money, that's our tax dollars, it should go with our children. I homeschooled my two oldest, my two youngest went to a private school. I was very thankful to have that choice. I feel like as a parent, that should be my decision. And for years, our tax dollars went to the public school, which if I want them to go to the public school, that's wonderful too. I graduated from Owen Valley, and my husband graduated from Owen Valley. I know public schools are a very integral part of the community, but I was very thankful that I had that school vouchers gave me that choice. And like I said, for years, even though I homeschooled my two oldest, a big portion of my tax dollars went to public schools. So I feel like this is a little bit more, gives a little bit more control to the parents, and I support that.
All right, education, I'm going to go from the middle and I'm going to move over here. Education related. Let's go with Jeff.
Yes, good morning. So I don't support the notion of putting the school board members in on as members of the party. Okay, I don't support that. I have two reasons for that. One is I do think there's a certain, I understand the comment about partisanship in general, I get that. But I don't support the notion that they ought to go on as a member of the party. The second reason is, and this actually doesn't really apply to Owen County, but it applies to one of the counties in Senator Bassler's district. Martin County has the highest density of federal civilian employees in the United States of America. Talk to Michael Hicks about that. You are you are excluding more than 50% of the people who are employed in Martin County by putting them making them members of, having to declare for a party when they run for the school board. So, and I think the people in Martin County actually ought to have the right to be able to run for school board. There's a lot of important work going on down there, I'm pretty sure. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people down there, okay? So I would encourage you not to support that notion. But I'll make you a deal. Here's the deal. Put it on the ballot as a Republican or Democrat, but then get rid of straight ticket voting.
All right, and now I'm going to shift over to this side of the room, and Marcy is on her way over. Is this an education-related question? Okay. We're making Marcy go back and forth.
I didn't wear the heels today on purpose.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I just I have a comment, not a question. I actually want you to increase the dollar amount for vouchers. There is a reason why parents are getting into charter schools and private schools, because there is something that the public school system is not serving them. No parent like me who would want to put out money from my pocket to send my child and paying extra over my voucher amount, because I see the value in that. If something needs to change, there needs to be more accountability into the public school systems. You know, it's ridiculous to say, I'm not against public schools, but then parents need to decide where my child needs to go. And if I feel get the value where it's in the private school or a charter school, that's where the money should follow. The money should follow the child. And I'm thankful that you brought this up, that, you know, private schools matter and charter schools matter, and I really want you to focus on that. There needs to be more accountability set. In terms of the partisan issue, I am totally on board with you that there needs to be, people need to know which side of the aisle they're on, and there's a reason behind that. We can see how school board members who are kind of behind the curtains doing things which voters are not even getting to know. To give you an example, in Monroe County itself, we had a superintendent whose contract got canceled, but he was still paid $250,000, irrespective his contract was ended. So that's taxpayers' money that's going to somebody, because school board members never did that due diligence. And I think it's about time we as taxpayers need to be holding everyone accountable, whether it's the legislators, whether it's school board members, or anybody else. So I'm thankful for you to giving those vouchers, and I would actually encourage you to encourage more charter schools into the system, because that's the need of a lot of parents, but they're not getting that across all the counties in Indiana.
All right, and then back over here, Marcy, we're going to go with Derek, and then we're going to wrap up this topic and move to a different one.
I thought I was going to be the only one to talk about school issues today. Senator Bray, I disagree a little bit on charter schools are public, don't have public boards, they don't have the same financial accountability. Senate Bill 403, making its way through the House, it's in the Education Committee, would level that. It's bipartisanly supported, passed 49-0 in the Senate, which would hold charter schools accountable to the same financial transparency that public schools are held to. I think that'd be a step in the right direction, especially if 518 passes and more taxpayer dollars are going to those charter schools. They should be held accountable the same way that we're held accountable for the same financial indicators, and all the information is available on all of the financial decisions we make to the public through DUAB's website. So I encourage you to support 403. The partisan school board bill, I've talked for 4 years to you folks about this. Texted you, emailed you, talked to you at length about it. a lot of folks that I talk to across the state who serve as school boards, I know this is hard to believe to people who are deeply partisan. There are a lot of people who are not deeply partisan. I am one of those people. I don't find myself in one lane. And so I struggle with the notion that these school board candidates out there, they're all just in these, I'm not hiding behind a curtain of who I am and what I believe. Issues that come before the Spencer Owens Community School Board are very unique to our schools, our issues that we're facing. And our school boards are political. Of course they are, and should be political. But partisanly political, I don't think they should be. I don't think that that is the right information for voters, for the community to just decide on who is going to serve on that school board. So I disagree with that. And Senator Bassler, I appreciated your comments during the third reading in defense of the folks in Martin County. I appreciated that. So the Senate bill has been amended. A lot of things have been amended now that it went through elections and apportionment. It makes it better. It makes it better. I disagree with the process of taking what was House Bill 12, whatever, I'll get the number wrong, but the House bill on partisan school boards did not get a vote. It did not make it out of the House. Senate bill came over, and Senator Prescott amended it to be the House bill. I don't think that process. I would have rather seen that bill stand on its own. But so Bob, I encourage you not to vote for it. I know you're in support of partisan school boards, as we've talked about, but I encourage you not to. And then finally, I'll leave you with a lighthearted story. I was at a event with high school students in somewhere in southwestern Indiana, where the mayor of that town was speaking to them, and opened the floor up for discussion. And the students could ask the mayor questions. And a student got the mic and said, "Hey, are you the one who passed that cell phone bill? We're not happy about that." And so that bill is working. Students are, yes, that is, yes. So a success from last session that those students are. You're lucky they're not voters right now, because they would have voted you out of office. They were ready to vote that mayor out. They didn't know anything about that bill, but they were ready to vote him out. So you better be lucky.
Any comments, final comments on this? Okay, do we have a new subject? New subject, okay. Right here in the middle, Bruce.
This is totally different. Thinking in terms of Senate Bill 426, it's a three-strike rule. Doesn't appear to be any need for that, as it can sets up small utilities to fail. Have some concern about that. And then Senate or House Bill 1459 provide an asset management plan through a public agency, potentially expose the utility to a situation where somebody wants to buy them and gets a lot of free strategic information, not helpful to a utility, can compromise a utility's leverage. So I just think about those two issues, which means nothing to anybody else here probably, but it does if you drink water. I'll leave it at that. So just important, and I can get you some more information on that later.
All right, I know everybody else has a utilities-related question, so please raise your hand. Utilities? Okay. There you go.
You were wrong.
New subject, but second question.
Yeah, so I have a comment about, I'm still opposed to House Bill 1007, Senate Bill 422, and Senate Bill 424. I'm concerned that we're asking ratepayers to deal with, recover costs for production not produced. This is all in. Typically in Indiana, the IURC only gets to charge ratepayers after the productive capability comes online, okay? But in this case, the exemption is being made so that ratepayers will have to deal with the notion of doing the research on the SMRs, okay? We had a big discussion about this last time. I get it, we're gonna go ahead and do it. Just one little point, there are only 2 of these SMRs in existence in the world. One is in China and the other's in Russia. But I still register my opposition. I think you could get a private consortium to invest in getting the research done for this, as opposed to having, making the ratepayers deal with it right off the top. So that's that. And then on the other utility side, there is a bill, Senate Bill 168, which I'm grateful has been amended. Senate Bill 168 was one that said that natural gas and propane are clean energy. We can have a big discussion about that. I don't want to fight about that. But what I do want to say is, as the bill was originally put in, all the other forms of clean energy were no longer included. Okay, somebody amended it so that it put in the historic stuff, the batteries, the solar, the whatever else, the wind. It wasn't in there in the definition of clean energy in SB 168, but somebody amended it, and I appreciate that. So those are 2 things on utilities.
Any comments? Yes.
Just, Bruce, if you wouldn't mind maybe staying around afterwards. I can talk about certain subjects very well, but what you just said just kind of went over my head. So if we could catch up after that so I can understand exactly what you're talking about there. Okay, thanks.
All right, any other utilities related questions? Prove me wrong. Aha, right here, Marcy.
I kind of want to go along with what Jeff was saying about House Bill 1007, right?
Yeah, which
Okay.
is in the Senate now.
And it's in the Senate now, and currently there are 2 SMR units in Russia that are floating barges, and they only run at 30% capacity, and it's taken 20 years for them to develop them. There is one of these small nuclear modulars that does operate in China, but nowhere do any of these modulators work yet. So this is a huge risk for taxpayers and utility users, which we all are. And this is going to cost, if you're going to give a $9 billion subsidy to help bring these nuclear reactors into Indiana, then you need to really look at this, because they are still 10 to 15 years out from being operational. So you're going to invest a lot of money, a lot of taxpayer money, into a system that has not been proven to work yet. And if they don't work and there are nuclear ramifications, the outfall from the radioactive waste will last for 100 to 1,000 years. Indiana is already on the #1 list for trash states in the country because we have very bad environmental policies. So bringing this into Indiana is wrong for Indiana right now. Finding renewable energy resources is imperative. And as bad as what coal is, I think I'd rather have the coal than know that there are going to be little nuclear modulars all over this state that haven't been proven yet. And we're going to invest $9 billion in it? I just have some serious concerns about that.
All right, Bob.
So, Laura, just a question, maybe we can talk afterwards too about this, but, so you're good with coal versus nuclear?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
I'm for renewable energy.
Well, yeah.
But if there was a choice between a coal plant and a nuclear plant, I'm gonna choose the coal plant. Because like I said, nuclear radioactivity can leach into the soil. Indiana's a farming state. We have a lot of water in this state, and anything that goes wrong is going to affect all that, and it will affect it for years to come. So until this is more refined and we know that it works, maybe let's look at it in the future, but I don't think now is the time to do it. They're not ready to put this out to the public anyway, but they want a lot of money and taxpayer money to do it. But it's not proven yet.
All right, any other utilities, energy? Right here, Mike.
I'd like to get an explanation on 1402, why we're messing with the business property taxes. Does anybody have a comment on that?
Well, that deals with the business personal property tax. Okay, well, for years, we've been talking about that, as you might know, Mike. And, you know, it affects some communities more than others. But I remember about 11 years ago, in the Terre Haute paper, they had front page, they had an article pertaining to this. And they had a local farmer in southern Vigo County, Mars Harlan, and had a picture of his dad's actually, 1971 John Deere 4020 tractor. And because of business personal property tax, he's still paying on that tractor. And in most cases, am I right? And in most cases, a lot of times you're paying the accountant more money just to put that on your taxes and so forth, on the returns, stating that. And so I think it should have been eliminated a long time ago. That's just my opinion. So, but everybody's gonna think differently, of course, but we'll see how that.
From the standpoint of Spencer, I'm the town council, one of the town councils. We have two large industries in town which have adequate people working for them. But if you take that tax away, the town has to come up with other monies to replace it. If you can give us a replacement for that tax, fine. If you can't, you're leaving us out on a limb. You know, because it's Boston and Cook. They have a lot of personal property taxes paid for their technical equipment, you know, the computers and all that. So it's not a matter of a tractor for us, it's a matter of income coming in from them to support our town's needs and, you know, how we operate the town.
Mike, what is that number? Can you tell me? No, I'm sorry. The amount of money you're talking about that you potentially could lose here in the county.
I'd have to research that, Bob.
Okay.
Sorry.
Senator Bragg.
So on that, you know, that bill didn't move out of the House. It hasn't come over to the Senate, but I do know that the chairman of Ways and Means, Jeff Thompson, is moving a lot of 1402 language into Senate Bill 1. And I think maybe some of that business personal property tax language is in there too. And he has a strategy as a kind of a reform of property taxes, which I'm in favor of. I think that kind of requires some of that. But I do wonder about the idea of getting rid of the business personal property tax, because it's a diversification of taxes that allows you know, local government to be funded, and don't hear a lot of businesses complain about that piece of it. But I think there's a strategy that he's working on that I'm going to continue to look at and think about. The other thing that's in 1402 that because you mentioned this, so I'll make a comment about it. There is a possibility that there'll be language come out in some way, shape, or form, or at least it's being discussed right now, that when you talk about need another form of funding, that I think 1402 also gives communities, even communities, I don't remember what the population amount was, but maybe a population of 3,000 or more, 3,500, excuse me, thank you, Anton, 3,500 or more, to institute a local income tax. You know, right now, county council can do that, and it gets dispersed around some entities in the area. that would go away, but each local unit of 3,500 or more could institute their own, which local governments might not love, because that's a vote that a hard vote that they might not want to do, but they don't have to do it unless they need to supplement the revenue coming into that community. So that's at least a possibility as a revenue replacement.
At one time, it was rumored we were doing that to be competitive with Ohio and Illinois because they did away with it to bring industry in. I think it's a very poor way of trying to bring industry in by cutting that tax off. But that's my opinion.
Well, and I don't disagree with you there. I mean, if you look at industry coming in, you know, Indiana, we've broken records since 2017. I think we were really excited in 2017 when we brought $2 billion worth of capital investment into the state of Indiana. We've broken that record every year since, and in 24, that record was north of $28 billion. So we're doing something right.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a brief comment. When we think about business personal property tax, we've been chipping away at it for a number of years, and my inclination would be to try to eliminate it at some point. But the thing we always have to be careful of, it's easy to get rid of a tax, and quite often, you know, people think, man, that's great, good job, way to get rid of that tax. But we have to think about the knock-on effect, and my inclination would be, if we were going to totally eliminate business personal property taxes, to provide the locals with a mechanism to replace that revenue. And so I think that and I don't know all the details of what Senator Bray was talking about with respect to what Representative Thompson is working on, but I'd sure take a look at that if there's a way that we could eliminate it at some point.
Yeah, I think that's all we're asking for, is if you eliminate something, give us something else to work with. Okay.
And I know that Representative Heaton was in Ways and Means and dealing with that topic very heavily. It's a monumental bill, the language that's in 1402, coupled with the monumental nature of Senate Bill 1, you have quite a collision of ideas and wording and things like that. But I will jump in here too as a county official, as you are aware, obviously concerned about the same issues. And the thing that we want to be careful about is homeowners, which we're trying to desperately give relief to. Trying to do that runs a bit counter to trying to eliminate or reduce the business personal property tax, because that shifts the burden to other taxpayers, which includes homeowners, which is the big focus of Senate Bill 1. So it's kind of an interesting collision of ideas, and there needs to be a good solution to that ultimately doesn't leave locals hanging, you know, not being able to continue offering the services that are there now. So that's a very good topic. Anything else on business personal property or taxation in general? Dwayne, and the microphone's coming around to you.
I imagine that you guys already know this phrase, don't tax me, don't tax thee, tax the fellow behind the tree.
Kim, another business personal property tax related question, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I know I already spoke, but I want to ask you about, Senate Bill 382, because currently it only covers Vigo County, Blackford, and Jay. And what is actually happening, it's, sorry, it's those 3 counties, because it puts the responsibility of, it's not providing extra funding, but it shifts the responsibility to the county. So currently in Vigo County, and I know we're in Owen, they're having some issues. They passed one referendum to pay teachers, all of that. The second one did not pass. So it's actually Senator Greg Good, who proposed Senate Bill 382. The reason that I'm concerned with that is it doesn't provide additional funding, but it's another mechanism that if the county ends up having additional funds, which if we have these property tax cuts and these business cuts, they're not going to have additional funds. So if there's a willingness and an ability to, for example, donate property, donate money to the schools, then they can use that money to fix buildings, do whatever they want. So I'm wondering, my question ends up being about that with the taxes, and putting that extra responsibility on the county council or the county commissioners to make that decision. Do you anticipate that that bill will then expand to other counties besides just those 3? Because currently it has to be one public school that covers the entire county. But I'm wondering if in the future it won't be expanded, where then that obligation or responsibility is shifted to the county to make those decisions.
Kim, what you said, what are the other 2 counties?
Jay and Blackford.
Jay and Blackford? Well, it passed out of the Senate unanimously, and so here's what happened with that. They're in Vigo County. They built this jail, and they got it completed, but they came in with $40 million under budget. Okay, so there's $40 million there. All right, go figure. And I've had people say, well, we don't want the school board to handle that $40 million. We want other eyes, so to speak, to look at it. So you've got the mayor has a representative on this 5-panel board, and all it boils down to transparency. That's what it boils down to, and so forth. But it's just it passed out the Senate unanimously, and so I think Tuesday morning it's in the local government committee at 8:30, and I'm the sponsor of that bill. And I've had people tell me, well, just give that money back to the property tax owners and the people in Vigo County. And I thought, well, yeah, that makes sense to me. But anyway, the thing of it is about the referendum that we had, 7 years ago, and to credit Dr. Robert Hayworth at the time, he met with a bunch of farmers in August of that year, and I was there. I got invited by a pretty big farmer in Vigo County to be there. And he's talking about this referendum that they're going to have. And it's a $56 million referendum, and I know it has nothing to do with any of you people, but and then he even said it's for 8 years and $7 million a year, and it will pay for operations and so forth and that type of thing. And keep in mind, the year before, we gave to Vigo County School Corporation the most money ever to fund that. And and then he was telling these farmers about this referendum. He said, and in 2 years, we're going to have another referendum. And I look around, and these farmers are thinking, what the heck is he talking about? But to his credit, he was being honest and open about it. The one referendum passed. The other one, 2 years later, did not. Didn't even come close. And I tell you what, we've got some issues. We need to do something about our schools there, and then the question is, do you have 1 or 2, or then, West Vigo, they want to still be there on the west side of the river, but and rightfully so. So there's a big issue there. So we don't know how to deal with it, and you don't, so and a lot of people are probably not going to vote for a referendum to increase their taxes and so forth. So it's an issue. But Kim, I appreciate that comment though on 382, and so, but it's quite unique. But we'll be dealing with it this coming week.
And if you've got excess money in Vigo, we'll take it here in Owen County. We can put it to good use, and we'll be transparent. Right. All right. Any other taxation questions? Property tax, income tax, finance. Jeff. Sorry. And this will be our last question on this topic, and we'll go to a new topic.
So I saw or read or something about a hearing this week where they were talking about the property tax situation. Somebody, I think, in the House was talking about a method by which they could make this property tax situation simpler, okay? And I think it had to do with evaluation and assessment. And as an Owen County resident, I applaud anything that makes the calculation of property tax simpler, as it looks like the assessor has a lot to deal with in terms of coming up with the proper assessment. So I'm hoping that they're talking about a general homestead credit and all that kind of stuff. I would hope that that's the case. And then that whatever you do, please make it simpler, because it is difficult to figure it out. It really is. And then the second comment I'd make related to property tax is, it feels like to me, this person, that at the end of the day, whether it's from the federal government that is cutting back, whether it's from the adjustments in the property taxes, that actually the funding to provide services in local communities is going to go down. So I second the notion that says we may have to figure out a way to do more tax. I don't see how we can continue at this level of service without raising more taxes. Okay. Now maybe we can, you know, pull a rabbit out of the hat and get it done right. But it's a tough thing to thread. So somehow you've got to, if you're going to take it away, I think it's a little bit optimistic to assume that everything's going to run just fine on less money. That's an opinion, sorry. That's not a question, except would you please make sure that the assessments are easier to do?
All right, and then while we're just transitioning to our next subject, I do want to mention that in the budget, there was funding for McCormick's Creek State Park in rebuilding the campground. And it was a significant investment. And Bob, you can probably answer.
Anton, yes, that was on my wrap-up statement I was going to make. But yeah, in the in 1001, there's a little line item there about McCormick's Creek's State Park for the campground. It's going to get $27.72 million. Okay, that's a lot of money. Well, and Dwayne and I'm trying to talk to the new Department of Natural Resources, Alan Morrison, and he made a comment, well, Bob, we'll see how that comes out in the end, you know. I'm trying to read his body language on that, and I said, well, Alan, talk to me before if you're going to cut anything. But I tell you what, that's a fabulous state park, the first, or the oldest, I should say, and it's, you know, people will say maybe Turkey runs the best or whatever, but I tell you what, this is a big asset that this whole community. So it's, I took a tour through there a few months ago. Chris Smith with the Department of Natural Resources took me around, and so what we did 2 years ago was we put $5 million in there to clean up debris and so forth. But you would think they will be able to do quite a bit with that money. So we'll see how it goes in the end, but I'm watching it. And so I hate to say it, but if it turned out to be 25 million instead of 27.7, but still, we got to do what we can to bring that back. And so it's definitely on my radar.
Yeah, and after that tornado had impacted the park, you know, that had a significant negative impact on the number of visitors that come here, that come downtown and spend their money in Owen County in this area. And so we want to bring that back with that investment. I'll also mention on the subject of the park, kind of related, and Bruce knows about this because we've worked on this committee, but our outdoor warning system in Owen County is going to gain 3 new siren locations, courtesy of the state of Indiana. Through their work and partnership, they're covering the cost of installing and purchasing those sirens, which are basically just going to be a part of our system, but we don't have to use local dollars for those. So McCormick's Creek State Park, Owen Putnam Forest, and Lieber will all have siren locations to help extend their reach, particularly for outdoor recreation and safety. So we appreciate the state supporting that as well. All right, in the back, Becky.
Is there
and microphone's coming around to you.
Is there a siren at Greens Bluff? nature preserve?
There
Or-
will be down at Adel Road, which will be
Okay,
close
which is
to Green
close.
Bluff. That's correct, yeah. All right, next subject.
Since we are sort of talking about recreational assets, I'm Kyle Hand with the My Path Trail System. I also serve on the Greenways Foundation Board. And I did, Indiana had become a leader with the investment in trails, had become a leader in trail development. And it's unfortunately this year, the trail investment is zero. We're in the second half and it's still zero. And I think the trails have proven to attract investment and improve health and attract talent. And they're really like a park. They're similar to a park. And again, we're trying to reach State Park to connect McCormick's Creek to Spencer. And boy, you can almost see it from where our trail goes right now. You're almost there. We're almost there. But what I'm thinking is, I understand the budget situation. I just, the money is the money. I also read, though, in the Howie Political Report, I forget which source he was citing, but the last 3 revenue forecasts have been a little bit above. And so I'm thinking if, here are 3 respected, powerful legislators sitting here, if one of you were to scratch in something about, we're going to do an extra $25, $30 million to go to our trails, I bet the other 2 would sign. And that would be really powerful. So I'm just encouraging you, as if our next revenue forecast, if we get 4 in a row that are a little ahead, surely there's an extra $25 or $30 million that can be put toward trails.
Kyle, my conservative and friend, Mike Morris, he's a Beagle County Commissioner, and he told me a month ago, he said, Bob, we need 92 million in there for trails, a million for each county. He said, I go, Mike. And they're doing all they can, and so you kind of need to bump it up. But no, he was, I told him, I said, well, I don't know where it's going to end up. We'll see. But I mean, Beagle County, they're making the trail and the path and expanding and so forth all they can. So I've always said to me, as you can tell, I need to get on the trail more, do a lot of walking and so forth. But I really like it, but the question is, going back to who's going to pay for it, the taxpayers that may not give a darn about trails and others that like it. But I tell you, Kyle, you do a great job, whether it's in Monroe County here and all over. You're a good spokesperson for that. And thanks for being up at the State House too, whenever you're up there too.
Yeah, thanks. Just, so, as you already know, Kyle, Governor Holcomb was a huge advocate for trails. And under his leadership, he put some money in the budget for that. And I know I was surprised by how popular that was and how many communities really adopted that and were willing to put in match money for it and everything. And so that program really took off, in all candor, much faster than with more enthusiasm than I thought it would. It is challenging this year with the dollars, and so that'll have a lot to do with it. So we'll see. Just a quick, because you're absolutely right. The revenue has come in higher than forecast over the last couple months, and that's very encouraging. The December forecast, just for everybody, the way we craft our budget, we take a look at the December forecast. The governor's budget is based on that December forecast about how much revenue will come in for the next 2 fiscal years. And then the House, of course, uses that forecast in December as well. And then the Senate, when we craft our budget, will use that same number. And that number was not great. It had showed $800 million, I believe, roughly $800 million, Ambassador will know better than I, about the new dollars in the first year, but almost zero new dollars in the second year. And so it wasn't entirely rosy. We'll do a new forecast in early April, and just after the Senate passes its budget, its version of the budget, and then the House and the Senate and the governor will, in conference committee, take a look at that and craft a final budget based on those new April forecast numbers. And it's uncertain at this point what that'll come out as. One of the reasons it was explained to me that the forecast in December was a little muted is because of the talk about tariffs and the things that we don't have any control over here in the state of Indiana. And so I think there was some concern, a lot of talk about tariffs. If that happens, that's gonna be gonna depress the economy, especially in Indiana, as a manufacturing state and an agricultural state. And so now that some of those tariffs are coming to fruition, I worry that that might create bigger challenges in the April forecast. I am not the smartest economist in the state, not the smartest economist in the room, I have no doubt. But I do kind of wonder about that and the impact it'll have. The optimism I have is that the tariff conversation is already baked into the December forecast, so hopefully it's not going to have a dramatic impact on the April forecast. But just a little bit of insight into to what you're talking about. But again, really is positive that the last few months have been over projected in revenue.
And Senator Bray, you mentioned again the date that forecast, the next forecast will be out. Is that April 4th, you said, or what was the date?
Senator Bachelor, I don't think it's between April 4th and April 10th. I don't remember exactly what the date is.
All right.
Yeah.
Just curious for our purpose here of the discussion. All right. Any new topic, or did you want to comment?
Just a real quick comment. I mean, admittedly, if they're getting better, that's good news. That's good news for everybody. But as I've been working on the K-12 funding formula, I've been working on the higher ed funding, it has really set in with me with how tight things are right now. And so, for example, right now, looking at the higher ed, we don't have plans to fund capital projects. And not every budget, but quite often, each budget cycle, we do fund capital projects for the universities. And so even if we get some reasonable numbers in April, and we have some additional dollars to spend, there's gonna be a lot of things that are kind of pushing for those dollars. So we'll sure do all we can, but it's just, again, it's tougher than I think what it usually is, at least since I've been in the Senate. This is my 11th session. This might be, I don't know, maybe one of the most challenging budgets I think we're gonna face this year. So we'll see.
All right, any new question? Anybody from this side of the room? Any new subject or question? All right, so now we're gonna shift over to the back to a new questioner.
Well, I'll jump back to the one about the modular nuclear plant. What entity's gonna be paying the bills for the disposal of the waste? Has that been addressed?
And where's the waste gonna go?
And I can only assume, again, I don't know a whole lot about utilities so far. That's not where my wheelhouse, but I can only assume it would be the utilities that would have those small nuclear reactors be the ones that would be responsible for maintaining the waste. And as you know, it's nuclear waste is here for, I don't know, maybe forever, at least for hundreds or maybe thousands of years. So I can only assume that we would saddle the responsibility with that with the utilities themselves.
I question that because if I remember right, the current nuclear situation, I don't think we have ever resolved other than the government's supposed to be responsible for it. That's how we got started in nuclear, because the government said they were going to take care of it, and I don't think they have yet so far. I like nuclear.
My inclination would be if the government's, I understand how the government would have a role in being sure it's kept safe. But I would sure think that some significant portion of that cost would be passed on to the utilities, which means what? Ultimately the ratepayers, so.
All right, over here we had some hands up. Any new, Rob, did you have a question? Let's get the microphone over here.
Mine was a follow-up to this last little thing. Leaving anything up to the utilities, especially a public utility like Duke, asked for a rate hike. $390 million was approved by the commission. I know that's not you guys, but to me, that means I'm paying 14 months of electric bills this year. So to say that if we're gonna have something nuclear and we're gonna leave up the funding of the disposal to the utilities, that is not acceptable, because they will just come and say, we need taxpayers to pay for this. If we do anything nuclear, they have to be setting money aside in an account to account for any cleanup and spills from the get-go, not afterwards. So.
All right, we have a new question right here, Kendra, and she's bringing the mic around here.
I'm sorry, Marcy, you know I'm loud. Speaking of utilities, small town Gosport, Indiana, most residents pay anywhere from $60 to $100 for water and sewer. So if we're gonna put money somewhere, I think it needs to go to small towns that had to have all of their pipes redone and removed, and put it back to them and fix what we've got before we start something new that we don't know anything about.
All right, we're gonna go back over here. Any new folks first? Okay, so now we're back to Derek or Jeff. Marcy, you pick.
All right. In the House, Senate Bill 280, which is deer hunting, which will remove which removes the rifle cartridge restrictions for public land and makes a uniform system of cartridges that can be used for the purpose of deer hunting on either public or private land. I encourage you to support that bill. It's passed out. It passed out 50-0. It's passed everything so far. For non-hunters, the situation is that the state passed the DNR set limitations and cartridge length and diameter, and so ammunition and firearms manufacturers said, all right, that's fine. We'll maximize. We'll find put the engineers behind it, and we'll produce the cartridge that will shoot the furthest, the hardest, within those limitations. And essentially, they caught up. It is no longer a handicap to hunt with those cartridges as it once was, whenever that was introduced, I think 20 years ago. And so it creates a lot of confusion for hunters as they purchase equipment to have to go to public land, to private land, and what am I legally allowed to have, and if I'm going hunting over here on public, but then I step over here on private, and I encourage you to vote for that as it makes its way second and third reading here in the House. So.
All right, and then right behind you, Jeff.
Yeah, this is a slightly different topic. So I'm curious, I don't know what the status of this is for House Bill 1001, which is now in the Senate, around the conservation areas. In the original budget, there were $15 million for land conservation, $10 million for state park operations and so on, all about helping the state entities do a better job of conserving stuff. So I'm cognizant of Representative Heaton's story that says, please don't come with both hands out. So I'll drop the numbers a little bit. Please leave in the budget $200,000 a year increase for Division of Nature Preserves. You think, what do those people do? Well, they're overstressed, they can't respond to things, and so it would be useful. And that's only $200,000, okay? And then the other thing is, there was in here a line item that said $10 million to match a Lilly Endowment contribution of $50 million. Anytime you can put in 10 and get 50 back, you probably ought to do that. So please don't scratch that out of the budget. Okay, so, thank you.
All right, and then right next to you, Marcy, any other questions? Laura.
I would like to thank Eric Bassler for helping Shelley Yoder with the bill that she set forth to have wild areas in each of our state forests. Wild areas are necessary because everything in nature has a right to be too. As it stands, there are 160,000 acres in our state forest system. 60,000 used to be set aside for no logging for natural evolution and for water quality. As it stands right now, of the 160,000 acres of state forest, only 4,000 acres are set aside for no logging. That's not enough. That's not enough for nature. So we need to go back and find that balance, and conservation is necessary. Protecting endangered species is necessary. And My grandfather was Ivan Chambers, and in 1916, he had a bet with Richard Lieber, who he was very good friends with, a bet of $1,000 that McCormick's Creek State Park would be the first state park in Indiana. My grandfather won that bet, and he took that $1,000 and it helped buy the extra 20 acres to make McCormick's Creek whole. I have a long history in conservation, and we do a great job with our state parks. But with all of the budget cuts going on in the state and around the country for outdoor activities, remember, outdoor activities are the #1 economic boom around the world. People love their outdoor adventures. Hoosiers love their outdoor adventures. That's why pathways and funding for all of that stuff is so important. And I know it seems minuscule to some people. Why does it matter? Well, it matters because we need air from the trees to breathe, we need pure water to drink, and we have an obligation to everything in this state because everything has a right to be. So please, moving forward, I would appreciate it if next year we can try that bill again and get some more backing for preserving some of the great places in this state that need that funding for what Jeff was talking about, the nature preserves. We need more nature preserves in our state forest because there are special places we're saving, especially in this county.
Just one brief comment.
All right, and then Senator Bassler.
Yeah, just a real brief comment. I would encourage anybody who this is an important issue for them regarding setting aside some acreage in the state forest to continue to engage with the governor on this. When he was a member of the Indiana House, he and I actually had a bill. Obviously, he had the one on the House side and the one on the Senate side that would have set aside, if I recall correctly, 10% of the state forest to kind of just exist in its natural habitat. So I would encourage us to continue to engage with our new governor. He knows lots about forestry. He's a pretty big landowner himself, and he owns a lot of forest lands. So he's real familiar with this subject. So I would encourage us to continue to engage with him, and because obviously if he were to support something like this, it'd be more likely that we'd be able to get it through the legislative process.
All right, and with that, it's 9 o'clock exactly. We're going to let our legislators say a few final words, perhaps, or a conclusion. Senator Bray.
Okay, again, thanks everybody for being here. Good crowd and a very robust conversation, which is always the case. I don't have a lot of closing comments, except I'll say this, because I think it's important and it's a fantastic story for the state of Indiana. I don't know how many of you know what the NAEP score is, but it's a educational score it's a test that's given across the nation, all 50 states, and it kind of helps judge where states rate. It's called the nation's report card, basically. And on Indiana's side, you take 4th grade students in reading and math, and 8th grade students in reading and math. And every state does that. Indiana tested 7,000 students, not just in a couple schools, but sprinkled across schools all across the state. And we moved from, in 4th grade, from I think it was 19th in the nation to 6th in the nation over the last 2 years. This test is only given every 2 years. And so 8th grade and the 4th grade reading is 6th in the nation. So thank your teachers, thank your schools, your school boards for doing fantastic work. It's something we really all need to be proud of. It's pretty well in math as well, not quite as well, but anyway, it's a really positive story and something I think we all need to be really proud of. Thanks for being here today, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, I would just encourage you to continue to come to these kind of events and encourage Marcy and Anton and all the people that are involved behind the scenes to have them. This is literally the only county in my district, and there are 6 counties in my district that consistently has these events. The 11 years I've been a state senator, I think Sullivan County's maybe had a couple. Martin County has had maybe 3. Knox County used to have them, but they don't have them anymore. And so that says something great about, I think, Spencer, about Owen County. So I'd encourage you to continue to come to these. Rarely do I get a chance to speak with as many constituents as we do here, so we sure appreciate all of you coming out.
Yeah, again, thanks for being here, and again, sorry I missed last month, but you know, we're going to have people who agree and disagree.
Oh, don't tell these two guys that I gave them a hard time for not being here last month, okay?
Senator, whenever you want to throw me under the bus, you go right ahead. It doesn't bother me a bit. But no, whether we hate vouchers or like vouchers, or whatever the case may be, I hear it all the time, you know, as far as, you know, viewpoints, and I really appreciate that, and appreciate people coming up to the State House, Kyle, Jeff, and Laura, and Derek, and others, and Kim, you're up there quite a bit, and so forth, but it's all good, and I appreciate that. One thing, you know, I will say, sometimes, you know, we haven't met in Clay County yet, but next Saturday we are, you know, for the first time this year. But yeah, Vigo County, they meet every month, and while we're in session. And a lot of issues that we dealt with last Saturday, I don't hear anything about it down here, what they talked about and what they're interested in. So, but it's everybody's got their viewpoint, and that's all good. A buddy of mine said one time, he said to me, he said, you know, Bob, belly buttons are like opinions. Everybody's got one. And that's so true, and God bless you. I'm glad we have First Amendment rights to share our opinion. So again, thanks for coming. Lord willing, I'll see you in the future. Take care.
So yes, let's give a big round of applause for our guests. Appreciate their time. We want to thank the Owen County Chamber of Commerce for helping organize the event. We also want to thank the Owen Valley Christian Fellowship for giving us the facility. Our first legislative breakfast was hosted by the Owen County State Bank. The second was Owen County or Spencer Pride. And the third today was Bean Blossom Patricksburg Water Corporation. So we appreciate their help in stepping up with that. And I think Main Street Coffee provided coffee and all that good stuff. It's been an honor to host. This will be our last one for this session. We'll have them in January of next year, hard to think about. And as I've left with folks in the past, this process never ends. And so when you think about unfinished business and things that aren't being done right now, there's another session. And don't wait until next January to talk about those things or to engage with your legislators. They need to hear from you now, or at least right after this session's over, to work on what's next for the legislative session in 2026. So think about that, stay engaged, be safe heading home. Thank you all for coming out.